Hello and welcome to Unproductive, a productivity series for the rest of us. First, I want to start with an apology. I realize I skipped at least 1 month, maybe two, early this year, so sorry about that. I was putting a lot of tarot content on this channel, doing some other content. I didn't quite have the inspiration for an unproductive episode, but this is going to continue to be a series, usually monthly, that focuses on productivity for folks who are not necessarily straight white male businessmen with 2.5 kids and a picket fence. And so I actually wanted to come back to that idea. Some of the videos in this series are more sort of like straight up, let's talk about tools and methods, but I wanted to talk a little bit today about stories and narratives that we have in our head around these topics of productivity or time management or organization and how they affect the way we live our lives. So I'll start with an example. This is something that I don't necessarily feel about myself today, but it is a narrative that I've struggled with a lot and I still struggle with. And that is the idea that I am lazy or I'm a lazy person. I think a lot of us who get into productivity probably have this feeling, whether it's subconscious or we're more open about it, that, you know, we need to be more productive because we are at heart, if we don't try really hard, if we don't, put into place these methods, then our default state is just to laze around and get nothing done. And that is a pernicious story. That is a story that obviously did not come just from my own head. It came from capitalism. It came from, like probably Protestant work ethic being raised in the US. Like a bunch of different things come together to make me feel like I'm a lazy person, including interpersonal dynamics and stuff with my own, family and all that. Which is a topic for a therapy session, not a YouTube video, but I think, if you look at some of your deep down core messages and stories, you will find that they absolutely affect the way you feel about productivity, the way you feel about getting things done or organizing your life. I think that I'm also affected by being somebody who has some form of ADHD or something like it. It's not a diagnosed thing, but I think that is another place where, you can get that message that says like, you're lazier than your other peers. Your focus tends to wander. You tend to be a daydreamer in class. You're never paying attention. You need to work really hard because if you don't, you'll get nothing done. And even the idea of getting nothing done, of course, you're going to do something. You're going to eat, sleep, and breathe at a bare minimum. So even the idea of what getting something done means is a story, it's a narrative. So I've gone through this, for example, in coaching, where my coach had asked me, what does getting something done mean to you? Like, what is productive? And we talk through some of the kinds of things that feel productive to me. They're not necessarily things that have to do with my 9-to-5 job, but it's interesting because then even when I'm not working for my 9-to-5 job, I do have a list of what's considered productive. And it might be anything from writing. It might be recording these YouTube videos. It might even in some cases be reading or watching YouTube. Like my brain might be able to filter that into productive. But if I'm just like reading fan fiction or playing a video game or something, playing Sims, for example, then my brain has this script that says it's not productive. And so the first thing that I would encourage you to do, you probably already know what these scripts are in your head, but if you don't, is to like think through. We've talked some on this series about asking yourself questions to kind of get to the root of things. And I think this is a place where you can find those stories if you ask yourself, like, why do I prioritize what I do? Why is it important to me to try out productivity? Or why do I find productivity really frustrating? What is it that makes it hard for me to manage my time? Or why do I feel like I'm not an organized person? And you can ask those questions and get to the kind of scripts underneath. And it might even be, it's not necessarily that you have a negative script. It might be something like, maybe one story you tell yourself is that the idea of productivity is kind of bullshit and it's based on capitalism and it's not fair and you shouldn't have to abide by it. But you might be feeling that in your life there are things that you would like to do differently, or there's things consistent with your values your anti-capitalist values. There are things that you would like to do, but you don't want to think of them as a list of things to achieve. You don't want a to-do list. You don't want to check things off. That tells you something really useful as well about yourself and about what kinds of systems will work for you and what won't work for you. So I found that, you know, both finding a system that does work, that like helps ease my mind around that script, but also helps to shift and subtly like change that story, as well as literally saying different stories to myself, can be really helpful. So one of the things that I always will repeat to myself if I start feeling like I'm lazy, or some of the things, is I will say, you know, like, lazy is a concept that people put on me. I'm allowed to do whatever I want with my life, and, you know, take whatever comes with that. That is my choice insofar as I have freedom, which is not absolute. But I will say to myself, you know, doing things like playing The Sims, as an example, isn't lazy. It is refilling my bucket. Like, part of what I need to do as a human is to take care of myself and keep myself happy, fulfilled, having enough energy and time and resources to do the things that I more naturally think of as productive. So reframing so that playing The Sims feels productive. Now, that may not work for some people. Like, for some people, you may really need to get rid of the productivity scripts entirely. For me, it works. And I've built my systems so that I am like trying to achieve things, and it does feel good to check things off and to level up. But in doing so, I am filtering in things that are really about joy, about refilling, not about accomplishing. So I'm shifting it a little bit. You know, being like, even just being realistic with myself about disabilities and energy limitations, and understanding that lazy is something that's defined by a very specific class of people, with a door that is closed to most. That's just one example. I'm sure you can think of a lot more. If you feel comfortable doing so, and want to share your stories in a comment below, I'm sure others would benefit from hearing about stories that you have around this stuff and how you've reframed them. But even if you don't, you know, please feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll continue to talk about topics like these in the Unproductive series. Thanks.